And welcome back to another episode of CodeToCloud. I met with my good friend this week, Paisley Churchill. Paisley, it's amazing to have you on the show. How's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. I've been super excited for this conversation.
Awesome. You've been on the road this week, right? You were telling me just before. You
Yeah.
up in
Currently, I'm
Edmonton?
in Edmonton, just doing kind of my rounds. I have a lot of clients and friends in Edmonton, so I came down for Tech Thursday, which I think is where we met.
That's right. Yeah, we met a few weeks back. I just had Phil on the show recently as well. So yeah, and that's an event, right? If you want to go and meet anybody who's who in Calgary, especially in the tech scene, it's definitely the place to go, right? So
Yeah. And same with Edmonton. I also do it in Winnipeg and Ottawa. So
yeah, he was
go
saying
do a
that.
Tech Thursday near you.
Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. Across Canada. So, do you just want to give yourself a quick introduction? Tell us what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Paisley Churchill. I have been in the custom software realm for about 5 or 6 years. Before that, I was in economic development. So I really bring kind of a unique perspective to my work with that technical aspect and then kind of the community engagement, the business side, and the economic development lens. So I have a business called the Tech Translator, and I work with non technical founders to help bring their ideas to life. And that's really my passion after working in custom software and seeing how many non technical founders lose so much money in that process. So I just really try to demystify it.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, and a great name, by the way, translating, tech translator, right? So, we see that a lot, right? And do you know what? I was just discussing with a friend of mine before, like engineers, because everyone used to be called a developer, or they were an engineer, or they were a technician, or whatever it was, right? Back in IT, but now it's everyone does engineering, right? Software engineering, cloud engineering, whatever. Engineers like to over engineer things, right? So they get really excited about technology, and something that should have started something as something small is massive and then very convoluted, right? And complex. So where do you see, so you saying that you advise startups, right? Or other companies, like their business ideas to technical decision making, right? So how does
Yeah.
that process work?
So I usually sit down with the founder and I try to connect with them before they've reached out to any software companies. Usually everybody thinks that's the first step. I have a software idea. I need a software development company. Makes sense. However, they're usually going in with such vague requirements. They'll say things like, I want a social media app and I want it to support video and I want the ability to send messages. So they have a little bit of a feature list, but without really going into detail about their expectations for each of those features, they get super wide ranges of quotes. Or they're having some really big assumptions made on behalf of the development company. And so usually if they're meeting with several companies, they're getting different prices, they're making their own assumptions in their quotes because what they've gone in with is really vague. And so it's just leading to not being able to compare apples to apples. And then they'll usually go with, a cheaper option, but oftentimes that's really misquoted because they haven't fully understood what they need. So what I do is I try to catch people before they reach out to that software developer. And this is work that needs to be done regardless. So it's not wasted time or effort. I'll sit down with my clients and we'll take like half a day sometimes and we'll go through every single thing. If they're talking about a news feed, what kind of likes do you want? Do you need like, dislike? What happens when somebody likes it? Does that mean it now goes on their news feed? Like, what does the algorithm look like behind the scenes? What kinds of things do they need to be able to post? What kind of commenting structure do you need to be able to comment or reply? Are there different user views? And that's getting into a lot of different things. But when I start asking these questions, there's just this blank look. They didn't realize how complicated it was. And the developer needs to know all of that to be able to give you a proper quote. So we spend usually a half day going through all of that. And then I come back with a package and that can actually just be sent off straight to the development companies. And I work with a lot of great partners, so I'm happy to make introductions, but sometimes they'll just go back to whoever they've already talked to, and then they're able to get really good quotes. And then I work with them to understand the differences in the quotes and the differences in approaches. So it's kind of like, why would you buy a house without a realtor? Why would you make a potentially $500,000 software investment going in blind and just trusting the people who are trying to sell to you to have your best interest at heart? And they do, but they're going to have different ways of doing things, and you're not going to be able to see around the corners as a non-technical person. So that's where I come in.
So you're like a requirements whisperer, right? I kind of like that. Yeah. So where do you see people trip up? Like you were saying, they go out and they try and, seek out a development firm, right? Or software. When they're talking to you, basically as a trusted advisor, right? Um, what are the kind of things are they asking? Like, what do you see? They've obviously got this amazing idea, right? And they're trying to get it down on paper or into code, right? Effectively. But like, what do you see? What's like the normal first baby steps, right? Before the eureka moment happens with you?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is that they don't know what they don't know. And so as I'm asking them these questions, they're realizing how ill prepared they are for a lot of the conversations. And I find that most non technical people don't understand that the majority of software is the blueprint. And so they're deferring everything to the technical team. Like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about how this should work? It doesn't matter. It's about how your business needs it to work, and how it needs to function in the back end needs to support that. So oftentimes, as a really high level example, a developer might say, okay, every time you go to delete something, do you want to pop up? Oh, I'll leave that to you. You're the technical person. That wasn't a technical question. Based on what you know of your audience, based on the sensitivity of the data, based on all of these edge cases, is there another copy of it stored somewhere? Do you want that pop up? That's something you need to decide as a business owner. But so often I find that they're like, oh, I'll leave that to you. And then when it's out in the world, they're mad because the software developer didn't put in the pop ups everywhere to confirm deletion. Well, of course, because that's more work, right? So, if you're leaving it to them, they might take the path of least resistance. They might do what's in their existing libraries. They might do what's their standards. But it's a 5-second kind of like thought process on your end as the person who's getting the software built to make that business decision for yourself. And so I just see that they're deferring way too much of this. And so the sessions are really around pulling out what they know about their business and being able to translate to that to the software developers, like saying every single time you're deleting this type of content, always have a pop-up.
Yeah, you got to be really literal with developers, right?
Yeah.
And engineering, you got to, and that's
Well,
why
it's
we have
not their job to
use.
fill in the blanks, right? So
Yeah,
what if
that's
they
right.
like, what if you're building something that has heavy deletion? Like, maybe it's like a notepad app or something, and you're gonna be deleting a lot. That's annoying to have to do that every single time. And you're assuming that this person who you've probably never talked to because it's coming through a project manager knows your business or knows the use cases, and it's just not there.
So do you find that as well when you're, say, you meeting with a startup and they've got this idea? Do you also get like, I don't know, compliance questions as well, or do you say you need to be compliant in a certain area? Does that come into your line of work?
Yeah, and it really depends on the industry and the stage of the company. A lot of times for prototyping, compliance is less important, but depending on the industry, we'll look through what's required for compliance. For example, I also have a startup called Team CarePal. I'm the chief product officer, and we're rebuilding a HIPAA compliant platform right now. And so there's a lot of changes that need to be made on the front end, like two-factor authentication. And I think a lot of people, when they think of compliant, they're thinking, oh, this is something so crazy and technical that I'm not going to be able to understand. But sometimes it's just how the experience is on the user side. So always two-factor authentication to log in. If you're going, like, they need to time out the front end so that somebody can't just leave it open with sensitive information. So there's these little pieces that we can build into the workflows to support that. Or if there's really highly sensitive information, do we want to password protect that? Do we want to go further in our role-based system? What type of reports are necessary to meet that compliance that need to be in the back end of the system? And then it's so funny because you can have this list of reports that you need to be pulled. And an example that sticks out is I was building a marketing software one time with a client, and they were like, okay, well, we need to know what percentage of our users are male and female. You never ask that. Like, so it sounds so obvious, but once we look at the reporting requirements, then ensuring that the front end and the flows are supported to be able to actually pull that in. So absolutely, yes, that's some things that we consider.
It's really important, right? Again, reporting the data, what you're doing with it, like, and people just like you said, if they don't know, they don't know, and it's a complex world, right? Because most people just see the app as well, and then you've got the back end. like
Mhm.
data residency, right? Or data sovereignty. That's a big topic at the moment, especially here in Canada. So you got to think about all those things. And when you're starting out, you've just been used to, I don't know, signing up online to your favorite, whatever it is, cloud service, and away you go, right? You just consume the service. So there's some really intricate details. And I really like that you've doubled down on the way the workflow works as well inside the app, right? I think a lot of people forget about that. So that was interesting to hear as well. Um, in terms of like when you're translating the requirements, you say you package it up and send it to the developers, etc. Do you then translate it to text speak, or is it still, I don't know, like a high level design document? Like, how does that work for you?
I usually leave it in a less technical format so that the founder who's sending it off feels confident that they understand what's being sent out. And oftentimes it's being quoted by somebody on the other side that is a product manager, or project manager, or founder, or something like higher up in the company. It's not usually being quoted by a dev. But absolutely, like I can continue to work with clients if necessary, and then start to build that out into functional requirements and user stories and those types of things. But I generally like to keep it more, I would say, like written, like story form. And we'll do things like explain the main entities and the big data relationships as well. But I think by keeping it accessible to the founder that I'm working with, it gives them a lot of assurance that they know exactly what's being asked to be quoted.
It sounds awesome. I mean, it's a great way as well, right? The story driven approach is always a better way when it comes to business outcomes, right? From my
Yeah.
experience.
And the
So,
developers are always so happy. They're like, "I can quote this in, like, a day. Like, this is so easy," and they're so happy, and usually, once we have the stories, I guess I do send out a little bit more of a technical document that has the requirements listed, and then we do must have, nice to have, and future. And then that gets sent off with the package too to kind of show the prioritization if we wanted to do, more agile methodology. So there is a little bit more. And I find that that spreadsheet usually comes back with pricing. And the software developers are like, or the software companies are so excited. They're like, that was the easiest project to quote. And so you're actually building in efficiencies by doing this work ahead of time because they're going to build that into your pricing. If they see a lot of ambiguity, they're going to ramp up the project management hours on their side anyways. So it's really work that needs to be done regardless. And I just think it's so much better to do it before you talk to several software companies.
yeah, I completely agree. And being one of those people that was on the other side doing the quotes as well in the past. Yeah, lack of clarity, lack of detail, you start building in time, right? Because you're like, well, I'm going to have to work through that or develop new solutions, right? To
Yeah.
mitigate certain unknowns, right? So, yeah.
And to your point about sometimes software developers over engineering things, so often you'll say, I want I want a system that does price comparison. And all of a sudden they're like scraping the internet and, they're building all of these structures and it's a $500,000 project. If it or then I'm sitting down with the founder and we're saying, okay, are there APIs we can access? Who are your partnerships? How do you want to ingest that data? What is the business side of this? But if you give such a vague requirement to a dev, they often do over engineer it. And so by having that conversation first, we can talk about this is the full thing that you could do, but we can also validate in this smaller way or build in these manual processes and then create a roadmap to build in more complexity as you make money with the product. But if you just go straight to a developer, oftentimes, like you said, they're going to start proposing these crazy solutions that are great, but not necessarily always tied perfectly to business objectives.
But I'm not throwing shade at developers and engineers. I've been there. Trust me. That's why I can speak from experience,
Yeah.
right?
It's their job. They're so smart. So they always think it's more complicated. So many times working in custom software, I'd come back and I'd say, okay, the client asked for this. They're like, it's not possible. And I'm like, I get it. All I actually meant was we just need to add like a toggle checkbox that has, the
And
user
then
can
they
check that
go,
off.
"Oh yeah, we can do that," right? Like,
Yeah, like if you're like, okay, we need a way to validate that they're certified in X, right? They're like, oh my God, like they're starting to think of like, where are we getting that data? And, how are we storing this information? And is there APIs? But really, all that was necessary is, okay, we're going to add a checkbox to self certify. That's going to go to the admin panel. And then there's a manual check. Like there's, 100 shades between complete automation and manual.
Definitely, yeah, like I said, the requirements whisperer, totally. I love
I
it.
like that. That's my new, maybe that'll be my new branding, the
I
requirements whisperer.
especially, yeah, like the horse whisperer, right? It's great fitting for Alberta as well, right? So, but yeah, like, so what are you seeing in terms of like, and I have to say it because it's the hype cycle at the moment, right? But AI is disrupting things, right? So what are you seeing? Are you seeing requirements coming from the startup, from the customer, or the client side, going, "We need AI in our application or our workflow straight away," or you see, are projects being delivered faster, or is it becoming more of a hindrance? Right? Like, what are you seeing in terms of AI as part of your day to
Yeah.
day?
The hot button question. So it's evolving so fast. So I kind of took a little bit of a break with some tech translator stuff recently, and it was crazy jumping back into things over the last couple months, seeing how things have even evolved since like February, March. The last 6 months, I would say we're building things for 50% of the costs using AI, and there's a mix of some of the manual processes and leveraging these, but it's having a few different implications. So, I would say the first one is pricing is all over the place because there's a lot of software companies that are leveraging this, but they're still charging similar rates to they would have before, um, which is fair because if you were to reduce your costs to as low as they would to just fully do AI development, companies can't sustain themselves yet because they don't have the BD cycles to sell 100 smaller projects versus, 50 larger projects kind of thing. So I would say the pricing is really interesting right now. It's all over the map. People are using AI to different degrees, and you're really seeing that come across in the quotes. But the second thing is, if they don't have proper systems in place in the guardrails to do AI development, you're not going to be generating code that's scalable and sustainable. So you have to be, it's really important, I think, now more than ever to work with somebody technical or to do your homework to ensure that the person using AI to build your product understands how to do it properly. Um, the other thing you're seeing is a little bit more mistrust, or you're able to build things in Lovable or Bolt AI quickly, so they're like feeling like they've been hoodwinked, like, "Oh, this is so easy. I don't need a developer," but they're still missing a lot of times the requirements, and if they properly scoped out their requirements, instead of just saying, "Make me a a news feed or something," they probably wouldn't be able to code it, because if they actually started building in all the dependencies, like, there's still going to be database linkages and so many things to consider that are above and beyond what a non-technical person can just prompt and then debug themselves. So I still think it comes back to requirements gathering, but it's giving some false sense of security or false sense of expertise by people just being like, "Well, I built this app in like 2 weeks." Yeah, I'm sure you did, and I'm like, that's great for a prototype, but is it going to be scalable? And did you figure out your requirements before you started prompting? Or are you just going to try to Frankenstein new requirements on top of already messy AI generated code?
Yeah, I trusted but verified as well when it comes to AI. I mean, some of the things you're talking about there is vibe coding, right? So, I mean, a lot of the stuff I see day to day is in the enterprise, right? Big tools, right? Copilot, right? Or OpenAI, like private AI platforms, right? For huge organizations. But to your point, you're seeing people now go on a website and someone's thrown together whatever you want to call it, like an app or a website that says, "I'll build you an app." You don't know if that was the right thing, right? Like, where is that? How is it doing it? Is it going to be serving the requirements? To your point before, so also having an understanding of the tools out there, right? To make sure, because you want quality, because the more you have to revisit something, the more it costs, right? So
And a lot of these AI platforms hard code all your variables. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm not a developer, but
that is absolutely right
is
on the money,
variables the right
Paisley.
word there? But
Yes, it
yeah,
was. Yeah,
I
yeah.
know a lot of it are and just for the non-technical people listening, it's like in a spreadsheet with Excel. Instead of manually every time putting like plus 10, you would have a cell with that variable to pull in, and these machines are just putting in the number 10 everywhere instead of pulling it like a developer would. And there are ways to do that with AI, but not on these super simplistic vibe coding tools. It's a lot harder, and you need to know how to do some of this stuff. And that makes your platform completely unscalable. And the way that they build code doesn't parcel out the code in a way that protects against system-wide bugs or cascading bugs that go through your entire system. The way that proper coders do this work is by really parceling out the code so that if something breaks over here, it's isolated, and then those linked variables aren't breaking and having a cascade effect. So that like those are just some examples of things that you couldn't possibly know, but vibe coding does have its uses in MVPs, and I think it's great that people are taking an interest in it as well.
Yeah, I think it's bringing more people to the table, which is, I'm really happy to see. Like I heard the other day, a firefighter built a fire risk app. I
Oh,
was like,
that's
that's
cool.
amazing, right? And it was based on the geolocation of where they were, right? So the geography, and it was using, I don't know, um, APIs built into the iPhone, and it was telling you're able to tell you the fire risks, right? In Alberta. I thought that was wild.
That's so cool.
But yeah,
I'd like to
go on.
also touch on because this is the
Well,
Code to Cloud podcast.
podcast.
I'd love to chat a little bit about the kind of like cloud, AWS, Microsoft service kind of angle of this.
Yeah.
And it's that when you're building using AI, or if your products include a lot of AI or different services through these platforms, you're often it's probably not going to be architected in a way that's scalable and that's efficient. You can rack up huge bills on these platforms, hammering against, their built-in AI services and, their searches and, all these different ways of scaling lots of user data and managing user loads and concurrent transactions and different things like that. So if you're not super aware of all the services available and how to architect them, if you vibe coded something as you scale, you can have huge bills. And we're seeing that more and more as people are using Copilot and all of these other coding tools to code. One, those tools are expensive for the developers to use, which is reflected in some of the AI coding prices. It's not just they're sitting there and something's coding it all for them. That those have cost to them because they're using a lot of data and a lot of AI power to do that. So, one, from a building perspective, you can be using a coding system and using it improperly and using a lot more resources than necessary, but also on the way that your platform's structured, you can have an absolutely massive infrastructure bill if you're not building it properly.
Yeah. Well, what we call, when it comes to that side of things, we call it the well architected framework, which sounds like a bit a very deep subject that it really is. But there's certain pillars in there, like whenever you're architecting or coming up with an idea, right? There's stuff like security, cost optimization, right? Operational excellence. These are all technical terms, don't get me wrong. These are the things that you need to be applying to anything that you're producing, right? And people don't ask the AI that stuff. They just say, I need help with this code, right? I need to build this module out, right, for this application. And away it goes, right? Without setting the criteria of how it's supposed to work, right? So to
And
your
they
point,
wouldn't even Yeah, and they wouldn't even know if the AI was telling them the right way. Like obviously there's a way to just pull down as much like if for the non-technical people, if there's a video, right, there's a way to just pull down the information needed in the right way so that you're not downloading 100 hours of video that isn't going to be watched. Like there's little things like that, and even if you ask an AI how to do it, you're not going to know if that's actually the best way.
yeah, you sort of putting your complete faith into it, right? Because
Right, and it doesn't have all the information because you don't even know all of the variables that go into making that decision. It's not something to play around with because like I said, those monthly bills can be so high.
okay, there's a top tip there from Paisley. Don't get sticker shock at the end of the month, right? At the end of the day, when it comes to your cloud consumption bill. So you said you've got a few startups, right, that you're working on, right? But what was the one you were talking about before? Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that works?
Yeah, so Team CarePal is an app that's for family caregivers. So I joined this startup about 4 years ago, after my grandma passed away of cancer, and I really understood how difficult going through end of life is for somebody, but from the caregiver's perspective. Like, all of our love and attention was focused on her, but we were all burning out as a family, and I ended up getting fired, actually, while going through that burnout, and it was right before my grandma passed away, so it was overall a terrible situation, um, and led to a really bad mental health problem. So we wanted to make that better. So I joined a startup. There was already an amazing woman in Edmonton that was working on this problem. And so for the last 4 years, we've built this free mobile app, and that is our mission forever, for it to be free. And then we sell a platform into long-term care, to hospitals, and to nonprofits so that they can engage with the caregivers that are using the app. So we have a program called Hospital Home, which helps hospitals to help patients and their caregivers reintegrate back home and ensure that they have everything they need to reduce readmission rates. We work with home long-term care, because the families still do a lot of the care even when their loved ones in these facilities, just from social perspective and making sure they have everything they need, and still often very involved in their medical. And there's a huge communication gap there on what the facilities are able to do with how burdened they are. So this app is a really great way to connect those dots. So we're in the process of rebuilding. We were prototyping over the last couple of years using a low code solution, Bubble.io, and that was actually great. We had a great experience using Bubble, but it can't be hosted in Canada, unless you pay exorbitant hosting fee.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
we couldn't kind of like PIPEDA HIPAA compliant with the data residency requirements. So we were lucky enough to be supported by Alberta Innovates and received a grant to rebuild our software, and that should be done by the end of the year. So I'm head down in the world of compliance and ensuring that this can be also sold in the US. So we're going through HIPAA. We're working with Bright Squid Secure Communications. They're amazing, and they're advising us on all of that. So it's a whole new world for me.
Yeah. In Europe, when I was based there, had all of these different countries that I had to constantly work with because of the different compliance requirements, right? And it can be a bit of a minefield when it comes to that, right? So having a good partner that can talk you through all those options, yeah, it's definitely a learning curve, right? But once you're through it, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I'm so happy to have Rohit from Bright Squid to walk us through all of that, and then my job as the chief product officer is to then take a lot of that and build that into our product strategy, like I said, with the timeouts that are needed, and the security measures, and how that integrates into the admin panel and things like that. So it's been a fun process.
But you got some projects on the go. You're like everywhere, right? It's pretty awesome. Um,
ADHD, baby.
well, it takes one to know one, Paisley. It
Love
really
it. That's why we
does.
got along so well.
That's why we get along so well, right? But yeah, so from I like to I like to give kudos to where we live, right, in Alberta, right? So, is there any cool startups that you're seeing, or stuff that's happening in the West, or even across Canada, and you're like, that's a real good story, and I want to try and amplify that?
There's so many cool stories. I think we're not doing a great job of telling the cool stories in Calgary and in Alberta. I think what we focus on is like, this company raised money, come out and hear his experience raising money, or but what like I want to hear the cool things about the tech. Like, I was talking to somebody at a Tech Thursday event a couple weeks ago, and wow, products, like that was like a it's like a product placement for Tech Thursday. This whole podcast, but, I was talking to someone, and they have a supply chain platform that Crocs is using. Like, that's so cool. It's
That's
like
cool.
create
That's really cool,
transparency,
right? Yeah.
yeah, in their supply chain, and so they have a customer like Crocs. Um, I have a little bit of my own YouTube show that I just launched called Tech and Taste YYC, and I just had Matt from Zero Key on there. He has so they're a sensor technology that's used in every major car manufacturer around the world. They're in every factory. That's a 40-person company right here in Calgary. They work with Tiffany and Co. So there's so many cool stories out there, and I just feel like they're not being told very well. We just focus on who's raised the money kind of thing often, I think,
Yeah,
and tiny wins.
I noticed that as well. It's like they ring the bell kind of thing, and it's like, you know, my startup's just been bought or it's gone public or whatever, and it's, well, what got you there?
Yeah, but from an ecosystem perspective,
Yeah,
why do I care? Can I work there? Is like, tell me about the culture. Tell me about the
exactly.
cool projects you're working on. Like, can I work there? Like, what kind of skills do you need? Like, tell me the things that feel tangible to me. I think that's the gap. But there's just so much innovation happening right now in the province. We're so advanced at machine learning and, we're putting our stake in the sand with quantum, and we're so good at deep research and getting better at kind of commercializing that. It's been a big focus of the Alberta government to commercialize research out of post-secondaries. So you're seeing that kind of meet together, and shout out to Edmonton because they're doing a great job commercializing a lot of things out of the U of A.
Sure, right. And we've also got like plans for big data center projects as well, right? Right out west or out east,
Yeah.
sorry, up in Grand Prairie, right? So it's like we've got everything sort of been planting, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen over the next 5 years, right? It's really going to come alive.
And another cool thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is that I used to work at Calgary Economic Development, so I'm filled with like go Calgary facts, but we have the highest head office per capita in Calgary. And it's mostly concentrated in energy, but the energy companies are the coolest case studies for digital transformation and for implementing AI, because these companies have had massive budgets and have had these huge structures that are generating so much data for decades. And so now we're able to leverage that and create a lot of insights. So even working I do some boutique management consulting with a company called Spare Parts and Gasoline, and we work with some big energy companies, and we get to see some really cool use cases of how they're leveraging all of this data and being able to use that to create better insights and create efficiencies. It's so cool. And I think probably people don't realize how many software developers and solutions architects are at some of those firms. And I guess you probably know a lot of, like, you would probably have some great stories from Microsoft.
I really do. And some of those customers that you work with are my customers as well, right? So it's all cross pollination. But yeah, you're right. They've got huge tech departments, right?
Mhm.
And some of our and some of the organizations here have pipelines running from through the whole of the continent, right? And to your point, like we call it dark signals. So like data from the pipelines out in the field, not just in the corporate head office, right? They've
Mhm.
got massive amounts of data, right? That they're trying to, make more efficient or get reporting back out so they can make more investments in the right areas, right? It's really awesome to see. So yeah,
It's so cool. And
it,
they have the budgets and the people to actually do some of this. So yeah, there's lots of cool startups that have cool ideas and are generating cool tech. But when you have $1 billion and 10,000 employees, like, the scope is hard to even explain of how much data. I think it's CNRL has some of the biggest data sets in the world in oil and gas. And when I worked at Digital Alberta, I had the opportunity to see some of their tech and actually walk through a virtual simulation of one of their plants. It's so cool. This is like billions of what's the thing called? Hexagon? Like what's the
pixels.
pixels? I don't know what it is in AR VR, but yeah, billions of these data points to make some of these models. It's really cool.
It's wild. It's wild. Yeah, oil and gas is like the scaffolding of the province. But I really am starting to see diversification, right? Like you said, with the startups and everything else. I think it lives in harmony, to be quite honest. Like I've never seen anything quite like it, right? Like polling industries, but like everybody's collaborating.
Well, and we also in economic development, there's a concept called like lightning rod companies or tentpole companies. And what happens is, since they are buying so much and procuring so much and bringing in talent to work for them, and oftentimes people are exiting or making just enough money through their careers that eventually when they leave, they're starting their own companies and they're able to bring like new ideas to the market. So by having that concentration of energy companies here, we've just had so much talent and bench strength in geospatial and AI and like a lot of these emerging technologies, and then they're being applied to other industries. So absolutely, energy has propelled this province forward in so many ways that are not just kind of what you would think about with stimulating the economy.
That's awesome. So I just want to touch on, you mentioned you got a new show. I did see a glimpse of it, right? And I mean, would be the worst guest because you're eating in public. I don't think I'd be the right the right person. Like, I don't know how you keep the etiquette up in there, but that was amazing. But like, do you want to touch on it a little bit of what's happening? Because I love the idea, by the way. Like, I saw
Thank
a
you.
glimpse of it, and you were like in a proper TV studio. Like, it looked awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like there's a gap in the storytelling in Calgary, I mean, across the province, but I'm focusing locally, so in Calgary. Like I said, so often you hear the same people speaking at these events, and they're amazing, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times it's like, "How did you do this?" or "Do you have tips on this?" And they're very narrowly focused on finance or tech or, an outcome and teaching people things. I wanted to humanize tech. So I wanted to sit down with founders, eat local foods. I love food and there's a lot of great restaurants we have in Calgary. So it was just an opportunity to kind of humanize some of the tech. The kind of main takeaways or the main kind of points for building this was hearing people say, "Oh, there's no tech in Calgary," or me telling somebody a cool story and them saying, "I didn't know we had that in Calgary," or "I didn't know that was happening." So just hearing those comments so often was like, well, then let's tell people. Let's tell people that we have a company working with Crocs or with Tiffany and Co. or that is, working with all the big retailers. Like there's just so many cool things. But oftentimes we're just so laser focused on who made money, how do you raise venture capital, how do you implement tech? It all has its place, but let's do this is like a hot one style, sitting down and eating foods and just getting to know companies that you might want to work with or might not have known existed.
Sounds awesome. And do you know what? Over food, what could go wrong, right? At the end of the day, great conversation, great food, right?
And I'm super excited to be partnering with Neo Financial for the next few episodes, and we'll be highlighting some of their local food partners. So that'll be a really cool,
Some hidden gems, I hope. That would be
yeah,
awesome. So, what's next for you, Paisley? What's happening over the next? I don't know. It could be 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years. Like, what are you going to be working on next?
666. Well, I'm going to Japan next week, so that's probably not really what you were asking, but
I'm
I'm
a bit
really excited.
jealous. I'm a bit jealous about that, to be honest.
I can't wait for that. But yeah, I would say I'm really excited to grow the Tech Translator brand and to really take that to the next level. I think that's a huge gap in the market. I don't think anyone's filling it. I think with AI now more than ever, people are going to be able to build things faster than ever before, in more inexpensive than ever before. And so when we're bringing down a lot of those costs, it opens up the room to do more of this scoping. There might have been more hesitance when we were spending more on software to be like, okay, another added thing to work with somebody ahead of time. But I think with everything coming down and us being more agile, these requirements are going to be more important than ever. But it also kind of leaves a little bit more room to do some of that work ahead of time.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and then I guess longer term, really excited for CarePal to take off. It's really close to my heart. It's been working on that for a long time. So we'll probably really hit the ground running with sales in the new year once we're completely compliant for our clients. And then I just like to do cool shit with cool people. And that's kind of my MO. I just an independent consultant and business owner and I just want to work with cool people doing cool things.
Gives you energy, right? That's what I'm getting, right? That's the recurring theme here. You want to meet as many people as possible and pretty much hear their story, right? That's what I'm hearing a lot of.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to you, right? Like you're
Yeah,
talking to cool people, you're hearing these different stories, these different perspectives.
yeah, totally. It's mind blowing sometimes, right? You get them on and they tell you what's happened before and what's happening now, and it's just great getting those different perspectives, right? So that's awesome. So where can folks find you if they want more Paisley in their life? Where's the best place to?
Who doesn't? You can find me on the Tech Translator LinkedIn page or on Instagram, and that's where I post my Tech and Taste YYC. I also post a lot of free content around tech terms and tech concepts, so you can do a lot of free learning there, or send me a message if you're interested in working together.
Awesome. We'll also include that in the show notes so people can get to it a little bit easier as well. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I know it's a Friday afternoon. and we had to rebook a couple of times, but it was absolutely amazing, right? To get to know you a little bit better as well.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So, folks, if you've liked what you've listened to, don't forget to like, share, and repeat. And if not, leave a comment in your favorite podcast app, and we'll catch you on the next one. So, goodbye for now.